For those of you who don't recognize this Grecian goatee formula, Coon, I call him Super Coon because of the uniform, which you never see him out of. This is Sheriff David Super Coon Clarke. He is the police chief for the county of Milwaukee. David Clarke, for the past, I call it a couple of years, has been ridiculous. He has been a regular on Fox News. Sean Hannity loves this guy. And he recently did an interview with Sean Hannity, which I'm not even going to give it any airtime because it was so ridiculous. But he basically dogged out the black community, the city of Chicago, talking about police being handcuffed. And that's why the level of crime is so high in the city of Chicago. But this was the same guy when asked about the McDonald shooting that claimed that he didn't know what was going on down in Chicago. So he's full of shit. But as it was, David Clarke has gotten his ass on his shoulders lately, and he's at the point where he thinks his shit doesn't stink. Now, back in October, David Clarke got pissed off at a Fox scheduler because apparently there was an issue with the time. And he was supposed to appear on a Stuart Varney, that's another racist asshole, Stuart Varney Fox Business show, but there had been a mix-up. And Sheriff Clarke decided that when they tried to reschedule it, it wasn't enough time for him. So he basically just begged off, or just told him that he was more important than to be given just a couple of minutes to make his point. He was always supported by a Wisconsin radio host by the name of Charlie Sykes, who is now a frequent commentator on MSNBC. But he and Charlie Sykes had been friends for like better part of 20 years. But even Charlie Sykes got tired of his bullshit, and he finally put out a tweet about Clarke spending more time outside of Milwaukee County than he was spending inside of Milwaukee County, and really just not doing his job. He finally, in October, put out a tweet out directly to David Clarke and said maybe he could actually spend time doing his day job instead of appearing on Fox. Clarke got pissed off, and he decided that he was going to block Charlie Sykes, who had been a major supporter of his for 20 years. He then retweeted, without mentioning Charlie Sykes' name, that a local guy claims to be a conservative and contributor at MSNBC, and nobody watches. So that was the end of that relationship. Now, if you're not aware, over the course of the 2016 campaign, Sheriff Super Coon was elevated to the mantle of the nation's most diverse law enforcement figure by Fox. He emerged basically as one of Donald Trump's most visible supporters on cable news and propped up at every chance that he got, because Mr. Clarke was heavy duty on law and order, and he was looking to try to earn a spot with Trump. Sheriff David Clarke is adored by many of the white supremacists, you got me on that one, for his unapologetic tough talking, while he's hated by others, particularly black people, for making wild statements believed to be below the dignity of the office that he holds. The old Clarke, as Mr. Sykes described him, was different. He had only recently been replaced by the brand Sheriff David Clarke, who trends on Twitter and is on Fox and is a YouTube sensation. Mr. Sykes claims that Mr. Clarke clearly has just kind of moved on to this national stature, and there's a lot of jobs that you don't have to show up for, but sheriff is not one of them. In Milwaukee, people started to take notice. Now, David Clarke only issues local statements through a spokeswoman. He doesn't accept interview invitations, and he obviously didn't want to talk to anyone regarding that situation in his county jail where 4 people, including a newborn baby, died. If you want to try to understand David Clarke, it's important to gain a sense of his improbable rise to power and his ability to maintain it against long odds. Historically, he was the son of a soldier. He was born in 1956 in a predominantly white Milwaukee neighborhood. Early in his adult life, Clarke went into law enforcement, sworn in as a Milwaukee police officer in 1978 at the age of 21. He spent the next 24 years at the city police department, serving as a patrolman for 11 years before being promoted to homicide detective. According to a 2003 Milwaukee Magazine profile, he fired his weapon only once on the job, shooting and wounding a St. Bernard that lunged at him while he was investigating a break-in. He also received 2 merit citations, one of which was for helping to catch a man dubbed the ski mask rapist in 1981. In 1993, Clarke received another promotion, this one to lieutenant of detectives. How he got that? He must have been kissing some serious ass. 1 year later, he faced a complaint from a mother of a 15-year-old boy who claimed he used excessive force when arresting her son, including putting his gun to the side of the teen's head and kicking him in the ribs. The complaint, as usual, was dismissed when the Milwaukee Fire and Police Commission ruled the evidence was insufficient to charge him. The evidence, unless you got it on video, is never sufficient to charge a police officer. Always remember that. Clarke at that point was promoted in 1996 to captain before becoming commanding officer of the Intelligence Division in 1999, where most of his work involved protecting major politicians who visited town. In 2002, he had been a member of the Milwaukee Police Force for 24 years, and Clarke was looking for a break. He got one. Unexpectedly, the Milwaukee County Sheriff at the time resigned to take an early pension payout, and Clarke applied for the job. He was chosen by Milwaukee's Republican governor at the time, Scott McCollum, out of a crowded field of 10 applicants. Clarke was not a widely known figure in 2002, and when his first election rolled around shortly after the appointment, the overwhelmingly Democratic Milwaukee County still had no idea he was staunchly conservative. And that's what people get when they don't do the vetting of candidates, especially for the office of police chief. The community's political leanings left no viable option for Clarke but to run as a Democrat and make it through a contested primary, as he had managed to in every election since. The thing about his appointment that I think has not been picked up on by a lot of people who've been reporting on this is when Clarke is under consideration to be chosen as sheriff, there was not any hint from anywhere that he was a conservative. I mean, Clarke came out of nowhere, ran as a Democrat, nobody checked him out. A few weeks before the primary, a reporter was contacted who was working with Clarke and whose opinion the reporter trusted. They used an intermediary to say that no one really knows this, but Clarke's a conservative. The Clarke that ran in the first campaign in the Democratic primary back in his first primary, he didn't talk about any of the things that he talks about now. He was just kept a complete and utter secret. And he talked about none of the community issues. Even after Clarke's conservative views became more apparent to the masses, he kept winning Democratic primaries. People just saw the D and continued to vote. But over the years, he's won by fewer and fewer percentage points. In 2006, he won by 8 points. 2010, he won by 6. And 2014, he won by 4. In the primaries, obviously, since Milwaukee and Milwaukee County is heavily Democratic, he beat whoever the Republican was that ran against him in a landslide. But the funny thing about it is everybody knows that he's not a Democrat, but he keeps winning the damn primaries. Clarke has frequently feuded with local politicians with whom he disagrees. Often he had found backup from Charlie Sykes on his radio show. He regularly found himself in hot water for politically charged rhetoric, much as he does today, aimed at black Milwaukeeans he believed were in a state of social dysfunction. But his rants about black Americans and his full-throated defense of policing during high-profile shootings were eventually what earned him a seat on the Fox News table, where he frequently appears, but he's not a paid contributor. As his profile began to grow, criticism of Clarke increased. Ahead of his 2014 race, a political action committee headed by former New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg tossed in a large amount of money to defeat Clarke in the race, as did other state groups. But with the backing of the National Rifle Association and conservative talk radio, he fought off the challenges. His election took place just 3 days after the Michael Brown shooting by police officer in Ferguson, Missouri. Those two things moved him from just being another sheriff in the Midwest to someone who had to be reckoned with nationally. Clarke relished the newfound spotlight in conservative media. He loved criticizing President Barack Obama, claiming he had a love affair with criminals, and he started using the Black Lives Matter slogan when speaking about the Black Lives Matter movement. And as I indicated earlier, Sean Hannity salivated every time he got Sheriff Clarke on because of his denigration of President Obama and the black community at large. The self-proclaimed People's Sheriff needs to drop the sideshow act and get serious. A lot of people are wondering if he's still a police officer or just a guy who plays one on TV. Sheriff Clarke became a boisterous Trump supporter and regularly skewered Hillary Clinton, the Democratic presidential nominee. His fiery campaign rhetoric earned him a prime speaking slot at the Republican National Convention. When he went to that convention, he started off with the slogan, "Blue Lives Matter in America," and received a rousing round of applause. He has campaigned for Donald Trump along the trail, and after Trump won, he was being touted for positions as high as a Secretary of Homeland Security. But the one thing that probably is going to sink him is that Donald Trump is a racist. So there's no way that he's going to put this man in that type of a high-profile position. Donald Trump already has one in Dr. Ben Carson. There's no way he was putting two up there. So, long story short, Super Coon better hope that the people in the next election have a short memory and that the Democrats get their acts in order and run somebody in the Democratic primary that can absolutely expose this guy for the fact that he's a Republican. We also need to get a disposition on the federal lawsuit where he covered up for one of his deputies that caused a traffic accident, and where in trying to cover up the traffic accident, they arrested the victim and continued to charge her for 8 months until she filed a federal lawsuit, got the charges dropped, and she's still going after him. And then there's also that small matter of him not giving out any information on the 4 deaths in his county jail. You talk about lack of accountability, you're looking at it.